Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Hello. Thank you for watching my videos. It's Mike Radman. It's June 6th, 2010. Few stories, really quickly though. First one, of course, is this week the US Mint ran out of silver. It doesn't have enough silver blanks to make enough coins. They are obligated by the Constitution to make a particular type of coin. I believe it's called the American Eagle Silver Bullion Coin, as they are mandated by Public Law 99-61 to produce these coins, quote, in sufficient quantities to meet public demand, end quote. So, yeah, the US Mint's running out of silver. I think people are rushing out and buying silver and gold. Wonder why. One of the other stories, of course, right now this weekend, we have the Bilderberg Group meeting. I've included a ton of links underneath if you're interested in Bilderberg Group. Charlie Skelton is there with his wife, Hannah, I believe she's called, and they've been getting into all kinds of trouble and getting harassed by police and whatnot. And he's been writing some fairly funny stuff about it, basically to get people aware of these meetings going on. Now, I'm going to tell you something you probably will find kind of frightening. Ignore the Bilderberg Group. Do you know why? Last month, okay, oh, and I've included a link also to Prison Planet, because it's Bilderberg Group, you have to have Prison Planet in there. Why is that not important? Well, one of the key things, of course, is the Bilderberg agenda has been leaked again. Globalists are in a panic that the euro is going to collapse and all that stuff. Article in the Telegraph today, linked underneath. Euro, quote, will be dead in 5 years, end quote. This is according to a bulk of economists surveyed by the Sunday Telegraph, basically saying they don't think the euro can possibly survive. Yeah. There was another article also earlier, I'll try to link it, with regards to the euro, the idea of a new euro. Slightly balanced. We'll see what happens. Of course, the whole thing of the European Commission and all that is really pushing for financial governance across Europe, and that's one way of doing it. Now, the other reason that the Bilderberg isn't quite so important this year is they managed to schedule it on the same weekend as the G20 finance ministers meeting over in Korea. Now, it's possible when they were flying back from Korea yesterday that they stopped into Bilderberg in Spain, so we should check to see how many flights went from South Korea to Spain yesterday, and see if they managed to pop in for afternoon tea. We'll see. A spot of paella on the balconies. Now, what's mainstream media been saying about the Bilderberg meeting? Well, the Times had an article, Secret Bilderberg Club Ready for Protests, essentially saying that none of it really matters. The Independent on Sunday had an article, or rather the Independent had an article, What are the Bilderberg Group really doing in Spain? Again, it's all conspiracy theory, they're just meeting for tea and playing silly games on the balcony. Telegraph even had one, The Bilderberg Group Fact and Fantasy. And of course, last but not least, the G20 meeting was going on, so we don't know how relevant Bilderberg is this year. The G20 communique, I've linked it down there so you can go and read it yourself, buried way in the middle of it. I mean, basically they're going to get people to go, oh, it's really boring, I'm going to nod off now. Back on down on page 2, right in the middle of it, we look forward to the FSB's interim report to the Toronto summit. Now, what's the FSB? The Financial Stability Board, basically telling governments what to do. Who knew? Anyway, so that's the G20, and further coverage of the G20 is also linked below. Why does none of this matter? Well, back on May 11th, there was a meeting in Switzerland, hosted by the Swiss National Bank. And I've linked an entry of a blog from the Financial Times. Known for its wonderful timing, Switzerland is playing host to an International Monetary Fund conference on reforms to the international monetary system tomorrow. The great and good of central banking are present along with a few others like me. This is from Chris Giles of the FT. Now, the meeting is held under the, quote, Chatham House rules. For those of you who don't know the Chatham House rules, basically they're not allowed to say who was there. They can't identify who was actually there, and they can mention the subjects that were discussed, but not in great detail, and they certainly can't say who was there talking. Good thing. So yeah, there was a bunch of people there. The next day he did report in his blog 4 of the things that came out of the meeting. One, it's mostly financial. It's mostly fiscal, rather. Speaker after speaker has blamed the recent European crisis and global imbalances primarily on lax domestic fiscal policies. Which means that, okay, the crisis is caused by your local government messing up. Which means that, hey, we need to have somebody to look after these governments. We need to tell them what they should be doing. Enter the Financial Stability Board. One of the other groups was headed up by George Soros. Discussion group. Yeah. Anyway, second point here, it's worse than we think in advanced economies. The government is hiding stuff from you, things are really, really bad, and surprisingly enough, bad things are going to happen. Global imbalances still matter. Yeah, well, we knew that one. The threat of global deflation is real if domestic demand does not grow rapidly, and it's not going to. There is no perfect international monetary system. This is true, but they'll come up with something anyway. Wait for it. I give it 2 months, couple of months. Next week's going to be really kind of hairy in the States and in Europe. Hungary, their forint is going bananas. I'm sure we're going to discover a couple more countries in Europe are having financial difficulties. Never mind. Concluding remarks by Dominic Strauss-Kahn. Oh, he was there too, at the high-level conference for the International Monetary System in Zurich, May 11th. Down on the bottom of that. He goes through a lot of waffle. Blah, 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 blah. He's a politician. Let me conclude. Thank you, finally. A number of steps can be taken to strengthen the IMS, International Monetary System, including better surveillance of capital flows and analysis of spillovers, an improved global financial safety net, and an enhanced role for the SDR, Special Drawing Rights. These steps can be implemented more readily than others as we seek to mitigate the risks. Of course, governance reform of the IMF remains a critical ingredient. Yeah. Discretion, okay, oh, and finally, before his conclusion, finally, in principle, a new global currency issued by a global central bank with robust governance and institutional features could provide a nominal anchor and risk-free asset for the system, independent of national currencies. So, they're not going to do away with your dollars, they're just going to have something above it. A super currency, shall we say. Wait for it. And hat tip to King World News, who has they've got an interview with Jim Richards regarding this particular topic. Sorry, Rickards, which is linked down below. So please, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, have a listen. Next one is oh yes, and the Real Press did actually sort of mention the meeting kind of in passing, because this was going on at around the time of the Greek crisis. A lot of people paid no attention at all to it. But the Associated Press had an article, which is linked below. The Greek government's plan to make drastic public savings is tough, but should work, the head of the International Monetary Fund said on Tuesday. So Dominic Strauss-Kahn came out and said, yeah, it's tough, blah, blah, blah. Partway through the bottom of that, they do mention the fact this meeting went on, and they mentioned a couple of other people who was going on. So Strauss-Kahn, who's French, was there. He was heading up one of the discussion groups. George Soros was there, heading up one of the discussion groups. Another discussion group was headed up by Donald Kahn, a vice chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve Board. Yeah. And there is opening remarks linked below from Philip Hildebrand, chairman of the government board of the Swiss National Bank, because they were hanging out in his country, so he got to talk. And basically saying that everything's a mess. Our second panel, chaired by George Soros, will examine ways to improve the supply of reserve assets. So Georgie boy is no longer in hedge funds. No, he's just deciding what's going to happen with the international monetary system. Nobody worry. What's George been up to? I've linked a link to Soros.org. He's getting all, you know, fuzzy-duzzy and fuzzy-wuzzy and talking about things and saying the world is a mess and here's how we fix it. I've also included a link to an article from June of 2008, basically questioning the whole point of a new reserve currency and discussing various ways of that this has been looked at in the past and perhaps ways this can be approached in the future. Finally, a couple of stories. Move to allow EU ban on GM crops. This was in the Financial Times on Saturday. Oh, sorry, on Friday. I read it on Saturday. Wow. Anyway. European Union member states would have the power to ban the cultivation of genetically modified organisms under a forthcoming proposal from the European Commission. Okay, so it sounds good. It sounds like, oh, okay. So if one country doesn't like it, then they can ban it across all of Europe. Except for one minor little detail. Down at the bottom it says, the decision reflected blah 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 blah. GMO proponents argue that the products have passed repeated health reviews from the European Food Safety Authority, and that without them, European farmers would face a widening competitive gap with counterparts in the US, Canada, and Latin America. But also, one of the things in here is strong barriers would be needed to protect states that reject GMOs from those that embrace them. Okay. Said his company supporting the measure that would give farmers more choice. This is DuPont. Syngenta warned the new proposal could have the unintended consequence of making the regulatory process more complex. Effectively, it boils down to they're not going to ban any GMO food unless it can be scientifically demonstrated that it's a bad thing. And we all know that the GM science is crap. So, sorry Europe, you're about to get more GM stuff. Sorry, not much we can do about that, other than protest and bitch and complain. For the conspiracy theory people out there, I've included a link here. BP chief Tony Hayward sold shares weeks before the oil spill. Chief executive of British Petroleum sold 1.4 million pounds of his shares in the fuel giant just weeks before the Gulf of Mexico oil spill. Now, the Telegraph isn't saying this is anyway connected, just that it's kind of interesting that he cashed in just before their stock tanked. Okay, peace, love, understanding, think about things. I'll speak again soon. Ooh, very soon. Bye.